had incredible costs for our communities, especially for communities of color. We have an opportunity to undo some of the harm that has been done and to create a system of regulation that works for Minnesota consumers and Minnesota businesses while ensuring an opportunity in this new market for communities that have been most affected by prohibition. Our main goals are to legalize, regulate, and expunge, and we are working to ensure that this bill does just that. This bill establishes an Office of Cannabis Management to oversee the regulation of cannabis and cannabinoid products and transfers the medical cannabis program to this new office. It establishes a Cannabis Advisory Council. It requires specific studies and reports and sets up a statewide monitoring system. The bill also creates an approval process for cannabis, cannabinoid products, and hemp-derived consumer products. It establishes plant propagation standards and agricultural best practices and environmental standards. Additionally, the bill provides legal limits for adult-use cannabis products, establishes 14 categories of licenses and related fees and a legal framework. We establish a social equity program to ensure communities most harmed by prohibition have an opportunity to engage in the industry, provide grower grants, and invest in Substance Abuse Disorder Advisory Council. Senate File 73 sets the tax rate for cannabis products, provides business development grants, sets up automatic expungement program as well as an expungement panel for higher level offenses, and puts in temporary regulation changes needed for the products we legalized last year. We also provide guidelines around testing, around packaging, labeling, and advertising. The bill is comprehensive, to say the least, and will absolutely have changes from now until when we take this bill up on the floor. Over the next month or so, this bill will have 18 committee stops. We hope that this process, and through this process, we can work together with each other and with stakeholders, Minnesotans, to get a final product that works best for our intentions and for the people of Minnesota. This proposal creates a new market in Minnesota, one that gives preference to Minnesotans, to their well-being, and to their interests as businesses, as consumers, and as farmers. Specifically, in this committee, I will draw your attention to Articles 1 and 6, which set licenses, which set the regulation for adult-use cannabis, the licenses, rulemaking of agriculture and food safety practices, micro-business operations, medical cannabis cultivators, industrial hemp, and cannabis grants. Article 7, the temporary modification of food definitions until the rest of the bill is in effect. And Article 9, the appropriations. This is a large bill. It has been heard in a number of committees, including Judiciary, Commerce, Jobs, and Environment. It has already been amended by members, many of our colleagues. It is undergoing revision based on feedback from members and the engagement of stakeholders from Minnesotans. There's amendment language that's being worked on with stakeholders as we speak to address some of the taxation and other issues unique to the hemp industry. And I will be joined, once we are ready, by an expert testifier, somebody who's been involved in this legislation for a number of years to get it to the shape that it is in today. I am very, very happy to present this bill in partnership with Senator Port, who's unable to be with us today, and to do my part to make sure that when we pass this law, that it is the best law to serve the interests of Minnesotans. And with that, Mr. Chair, thank you for having me today and for taking up Senate File 73.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Our next step is for our friend Ms. Painter to talk us through Senate Council's presentation of the bill, please.
Mr. Chair and members, I'll just do a walkthrough of the bill, highlighting the ag provisions that are most relevant to this committee. Article 1 is the proposed new Chapter 342, which regulates adult-use cannabis. There's a number of definitions in Section 1 of interest to us. Among those are cannabis plant, cannabis seed, cultivation, hemp concentrate, hemp fiber product, hemp grain, hemp plant parts, hemp seed, and industrial hemp. Section 2 establishes the Office of Cannabis Management. Subdivision 4 requires interagency agreements with the Commissioner of Agriculture to ensure edible products are handled consistent with food safety requirements. Subdivision 5 authorizes rulemaking for this. Section 3 creates the Cannabis Advisory Council, a 41-member group to meet quarterly to review cannabis policy and make recommendations to the Office of Cannabis Management. Subdivision 1 lists out the members. Number 8 is the Commissioner of Agriculture. Number 15 is an expert in farming. Number 28 is an expert in cannabis cultivation. Section 7, Subdivision 1 requires the Office of Cannabis Management to make rules for plant propagation in consultation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. The office must prohibit plants derived from genetic engineering. Subdivision 2 requires the office to establish best practices for cultivation of cannabis in consultation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. Section 10 lists the different license types, and Section 16 states license selection criteria. Section 21 has the cannabis cultivator licensing. There's 2 different types. A craft cultivator has a maximum of 10,000 square feet of plant canopy, and a bulk cultivator can have a maximum of 30,000 square feet of cannabis plant canopy. Section 22 contains the requirements for cannabis cultivator operations. Section 33 is cannabis microbusinessing licensing, allows a license holder to grow cannabis, make concentrate, manufacture products, purchase concentrate, sell immature plants, and operate on-site consumption. Section 34 contains the operations requirements for cannabis microbusinesses, including the compliance with the requirements for cannabis cultivator operations. Section 43 is medical cannabis cultivator licensing. Section 59 states that the industrial hemp program in Chapter 18K is unchanged. Section 64 requires the Office of Cannabis Management to establish a grant program in consultation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. These grants would support organizations to help farmers navigate the legal requirements of cannabis growing and also fund nonprofit corporations that would give loans to farmers to expand into the legal cannabis industry. Article 2 relates to taxes. Article 3 is about business development and establishes several grant programs within the Department of Employment and Economic Development. Article 4 relates to criminal penalties. Article 5 relates to expungement. Article 6 has miscellaneous provisions, including Section 5 that modifies the food definition in Chapter 34A to reflect the new coding in this bill. I'll just note that edibles containing THC are not legally considered food. Article 7 has temporary regulations. Section 1 updates the food definition again in Chapter 34A. Article 8 changes the scheduling of marijuana. Article 9 contains appropriations, including an appropriation to the Commissioner of Agriculture for food safety and pesticide enforcement, lab testing, and rulemaking. And then there's a number of repealers, the statutes relating to controlled substances and rules relating to medical cannabis are repealed.
Thank you, Ms. Painter. Thank you very much. We're now to move on to testimony. And there are quite a few folks who would like their voices heard on this issue. So members, I'm going to ask you to withhold your questions after each testifier. We will pause after every 3 or 4 or 5 testifiers for an opportunity to ask questions of the testifiers, and then we will again recommence with our engagement with the testifiers. So please, if you do have questions, write them down, and then we'll pause and we can handle them when we do. Now, testifiers themselves, if you could please be as succinct as possible. As I said, we do have a very robust list of testifiers. We are aiming for 2 minutes per testifier. And we will have to encourage you to stop if you keep talking. I encourage you to stop. That's what we'll do if the testimony goes on too long. So let's begin, if we could. Ms. Dawson, if you would please. Ms. Dawson and Mr. Ms. Dawson, if you would please come to the testifiers table, provide your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Good afternoon. Am I okay? Can you hear me okay? My name is Angela Dawson. I am a fourth-generation reclamation farmer here from this area, and I am the founder and CEO of the 40-Acre Cooperative. The 40-Acre Co-op is a regional hub of co-op farmers who create economic programs that support education, training, and incubators for farmers in the region. We operate in 5 states and on 2 tribal territories. I'm also the CEO of The Great Rise. The Great Rise is an organization that's working for cannabis equity within the state of Minnesota. And I'm here just to make 2 real succinct points with the group. There's a lot that I can share about what's happening on the ground floor with especially independent farmers in the state. And I think that most of y'all are up to speed on some of the issues that have been brought forward in some of these committee meetings. But what I want you to know is that Minnesota agricultural regenerative farmers deserve a lot better than what we've been getting in terms of agricultural resources over the past couple of decades. We have been taking on the burden of regenerative farming, of regenerating the soil, of taking care of the water, of taking care of animals, and our communities. 40-Acre Cooperative has hired 22 people in Pine County, just using my own bootstraps, and I would love to be able to hire more folks. And it's only because of legalized hemp that I've been able to do this work. So I support this bill. I know that there's going to be changes. I just want to make sure that we keep Minnesota farmers at the top of our mind, and not just Minnesota farmers who have corporate contracts. The regenerative farmers who are hanging on by a thread and who have really had to deal with a lot of issues since the cannabis bills have been flip-flopping over the past couple of years. We've taken a lot of financial hits in order to stay sustainable, and we would want the committee to know that it's not easy to do regenerative farming. And so specifically in the bill, I just want to say that there's the 3 to 5 acre limitation that doesn't allow for us to figure out and mitigate weather issues, and those kinds of issues need to be looked at. Other than that, I want to just thank the committee, but I also want to say that the people who have been most harmed by cannabis prohibition should also be the ones to mostly benefit from the legalization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson. Our next testifier is virtual. Mr. John Meyer, if you would, please. Unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name, and commence your testimony.
Sure. Andrew, okay? It's Andrew John Meyer. Good afternoon to Mr. Chairman and committee members. I run Green Machine Farm, a diversified livestock operation on 95 acres in Goodhue County, Minnesota, in District 20. For the past 10 years, I've raised cattle, hogs, and chickens on my farm, and I directly market that produce to my customers. I can testify that it's hard to survive in agricultural markets as a small producer, and it would be nearly impossible without the flexibility to direct market our beef, to add value through further processing of our pork, and the more manageable regulatory and compliance costs that we are currently afforded as a small egg producer. I'm here today because the bill before your committee will open an entirely new agricultural market in this state, and we will not be the first state to create such a market. And the bill before you is, I believe, the best attempt yet to address the problems that other states have faced when they've created their regulated cannabis markets. States like California created medical cannabis markets that were almost unregulatable, creating regulatory confusion for years. States like Oregon created a recreational cannabis market with no caps on licenses, flooding their markets with over 6 years' supply, driving small producers out of business, or worse, back to the black market. States like Oklahoma have failed to provide adequate regulation and enforcement of their medical cannabis market, leading to over a 90% failure rate when testing for contaminants. To their credit, authors of this bill seem to have learned a multitude of lessons from other states' attempts to create regulated cannabis markets. Through its explicit preference for small craft and micro business producers, through its limits on vertical integration, and through its flexibility in marketing and processing for the smallest growers, this bill is our best chance to create a thriving cannabis market that Minnesotans could be proud of. I urge you to support this bill, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. John Meyer. Mr. Weber from Crested River Cannabis Company, if you could please come to the testifiers table, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Murphy. I would like to thank Senator Port, Representative Stevenson, and Senator Murphy here and their staff advisors and cannabis lobby for their tireless efforts. But my name is Sean Weber. I am a 5-year licensed hemp farmer and processor with the Department of Agriculture. I'm the owner-operator of Crested River Cannabis Company and the president of the Minnesota Hemp Growers Cooperative. I'm based in Morgan, Minnesota, population 900 people, represented by Senator Dames in District 15. I have worked with the Office of Medical Cannabis in the past on rules for labels and dried cannabis flower. I've been very active with the Minnesota's Ready campaign recently relative to SF73 and HF100. I can say, while we do see some issues with the initial language of hemp-derived low-dose portions, we understand the authors have been addressing these and much other oversights. We see a space for breweries, restaurants, wellness centers alike, whether they in the low-dose market, and ultimately the legalization will allow the consumers to decide whether they want real or synthetic THC, as well as the separation of hemp and cannabis for the farmers, and finally allotted grow sizes to meet market demands. As a representative of more than 30 hemp operations through the cooperative, we support SF73 and the dialogue and efforts to address the minor issues and oversights being brought to light. Representative Stevenson just last Thursday told the testifiers that their concerns are being heard and are being addressed. The Agricultural Committee will hear today those same testimonies, and we want to make sure that people understand that amendments are being drafted and fixes are being implemented. The bones of FS73 and HF100 are from HF600, so there's some natural cleanup that needs to be done. And at the end of the day, we will get this right. Hemp farmers and cannabis farmers alike will be able to succeed, and the residents of Minnesota will benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Ms. Pinder from Grounded Gardens, if you would please come to the table, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Hi, my name is Bridget Pinder. I am the owner of Grounded Gardens, the hemp farm and cannabis company, and the co-owner of Ganja Gals, an event company bringing women together in the name of cannabis. I'm on the board of Minnesota Normal, the Minnesota Hemp Growers Co-op, and both of our companies are part of the MN is Ready coalition. As an activist for over 10 years in Minnesota, fighting for the legalization of cannabis, I am overjoyed to sit in front of you today to talk about the legalization in Minnesota and our support of this bill. As a woman-owned seed-to-shelf company, Grounded Gardens knows that all cannabis businesses begin with the farmer. Our farmers are vital to this industry. Every cannabis product is based on how the farmer grows their cannabis. We grow our cannabis on 18 acres of organic land in rural Minnesota. Turning our land into organic over the past 5 years has been a challenge. Dealing with weeds and pests has been a learning curve. But when I dig into the soil and I see movement from the worms that are reclaiming the ground after many years of corn and soybean rotation, it makes it all worth it. Our business is asking that you treat us like every other farmer. Allow us to continue to participate in farmers markets and vendor shows, where we educate the public on the benefits of cannabis and knowing your farmer. We are also part of the Minnesota Grown program, and we wear that logo proudly on all of our packaging. This past summer, we had the Stearns County Sheriff Department, along with the MDA, out to our farm for some education on hemp plants. It is important for us all to work together when we write this bill to get the best outcome for Minnesotans who want to legally use cannabis. Minnesota is about supporting small businesses. I am asking you today to let the small businesses like mine that have built the cannabis industry in Minnesota thus far to transition through modifications in this bill. We are grateful for all the hard work the authors and the team are doing on this bill. We look forward to working with everyone on changes going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pinder. Mr. Brinkman from Superior Cannabis Company, if you would please come to the table. State your full name for the record and commence your testimony.
Thank you for allowing us to testify today, committee. I'm Jeff Brinkman, the owner of Superior Cannabis Company. We've been farming hemp since 2018 and have many of our family and other amazing employees working in the fields and in our 2 Minnesota retail stores, as well as 1 in Wisconsin. We employ 14 people and hope to grow our business with cannabis legalization and hemp-derived product expansion. Our plans include additional retail locations, small manufacturing, and continuing development of small batch cannabis products utilizing our current Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Florida production partners. Our question is, will this bill allow us to continue to grow our hemp business without being encumbered by a legalization bill that mentions hemp 363 times in its reading? The current bill appears to hinder our long-term relationships with labs and manufacturers that are best in class and are located in other states. These labs provided us with small batch manufacturing when many others would not provide those services given our limited production volume. Some of these partners utilize proprietary technologies that cannot be sourced elsewhere, and we believe the import and export of our compliant hemp products should not be hindered, and the bill restrictions are inconsistent with interstate commerce laws and fair trade practices. The bill also limits hemp cannabinoids other than THC and CBD in several products and does not account for natural spectrum of cannabinoids that exist in the plants. The current bill limits some of those cannabinoids down to 0.1% or 0.1 of a milligram, limiting the effectiveness of some of our existing products. We have numerous projects underway with local partners that would be substantially hindered by the current bill's restriction on hemp, some of which are not applicable in any other state. We understand that there are moves or their work is underway to change those. On the marijuana portion of the bill, we believe grow size is not reasonable for outdoor grows and does not encourage organic and regenerative practices enough, which are the most beneficial for our environment and consumers in Minnesota. So I appreciate your time today and really appreciate a hard look at this bill. We're for the bill, but we're for the amendments that need to separate the hemp from marijuana restriction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. Members, we'll take a pause now to ask any questions or have any comments that we have for our first 5 testifiers. Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And since Mr. Brinkman's still up here, I would ask you a question concerning the implementation of marijuana. You have to get a license, and what would the transition look like for you? You kind of shared some of that, but what would that look like for you, being you're a hemp grower now?
I mean, we grow less. We grow about 3,000 to 5,000 plants a year in the hemp space. And our concern is if we were to grow that same space in the marijuana side, all of a sudden our family business would be split up where we can't do manufacturing. So you have to parse out your business by the time you actually reach some level of scale. So micro craft is great, but a larger growing space, especially for outdoor and organic farmers, is really needed. And I think the other testifiers did a great job on kind of telling you what the problem is when if we have all our crop in one spot and it's 1 acre or 10,000 square feet, it really is limiting where it's really exposing us to risk of weather, overspray, all kinds of things like that. So,
Senator Dornick.
Just, Mr. Chair, just one follow-up. So you're saying you'd have to split your business? Is that correct?
Yeah, with the certain caps, if you cultivate vertical if you cultivate, manufacture, and you have a retail location, you would have to split those off as you hit a certain size. And I think those caps really don't let a Minnesota company expand into a mid-size small business.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. Any other questions, members? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, I forget the name of the testifier that was, I think it was just prior, the Minnesota Grown. But my question is, with this product, would you be looking to sell it at the farmer's market and those types of venues? Is that one of the opportunities you're looking at?
I think that's Ms. Pinder.
Hi, yes, this is Bridget Pinder. Yes, currently we go to farmers markets and vendor shows and things like that, and we sell our hemp products and the products that we make there. Is that
Senator Westrom.
And Mr. Chair, Ms. Pender, the products now, you're talking industrial hemp, correct?
I'm talking, yep, CBD, and then our CBD products have some THC in them, up to the 0.3% allowable.
So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Pender, how would that change under this bill? Because this would allow much higher THC and other products derived from cannabis. What would you see expanding or being sold or peddled from your point of view? And what would this do to your business?
Ms. Pinder?
As a farmer, I would like to, as other farmers have spoke about, be able to sell my things that I produce from my farm at farmers markets. So if I produce cannabis, higher THC, I would like to be able to sell that under the requirements of checking age requirements and things like that. But I think it's important that we can still educate the consumers in public places too.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Pender, what kind of products do you think you could sell at the farmer's market from this type of cannabis?
I'm currently selling low dose, the low dose hemp-derived THC products at farmers markets. So for myself, I don't see any issue selling the different THC because we're already selling the THC at the farmers markets. We've had no issues since we started in July.
Senator Westrom.
And so anything beyond that? I mean, like the product that people would smoke, food products that are made out of it that would have higher THC. I mean, all of those things, are those things that you might sell from your farming operation?
If we were allowed to, yes.
Okay. Lastly, Mr. President, or Mr. Chair, Ms. Pender, where did you say your farm was? And coupled with that is, do you sell off the farm then as well as, I mean, like a small business from your farm location as well as the farmers markets?
So our farm is out by Hutchinson, Minnesota, and we have a store in Silver Lake where we sell our wares. We would sell our vegetables and things from our store as well, from our farm. We do not sell off of our farm because I try not to bring the public to our farm. So that's the reason we do farmers markets. We were a part of the Hutchinson Farmer Market for 2 years in a row, and we just opened a new location in St. Paul. And we're looking at getting into the St. Paul Farmers Market this summer as well.
Senator Westrom.
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess I did have you must have read my mind. But Ms. Pender, there's language in this bill that talks about different social equitable grants. Would you be eligible for those grants, or what are those grants and loans? The criteria, would they be eligible for your farm? It seems like maybe they'd be more restrictive than something you could be eligible for.
Yes, I believe they would be eligible for my farm.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our first 5 testifiers, members? Okay. Mr. Valancourt from Global Organic Distro, if you would please come to the table, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Hi, my name is Beecher Valancourt. I'm an owner-operator of Global Organic. We are a vertically integrated cannabis company located in Northeast Minneapolis. We partner with hemp farmers to purchase biomass, which my company then handles the organic certified extraction, processing, and manufacturing of hemp-derived wellness products. We distribute our personal brands and vetted third-party brands to our wholesale network of over 500 retail accounts. I'm a board member of the Minnesota Hemp Growers Cooperative and a part of the Economic Equity Task Force led by the Great Rise. With all eyes on the nation on Minnesota waiting to see how we will handle this, I want to assure you that legalizing is the step in the right direction. Legalization will allow full access to plant medicine for all communities in Minnesota, farmers the opportunity to obtain contracts on their outdoor and indoor grows, and new entrepreneurs the ability to step into an industry that they are passionate about while allowing current businesses such as myself the opportunity to utilize our already in place teams and equipment to make quality and consistent medical and recreational cannabis products for patients and adults. And if we do the right thing and take the equity portion of this bill as seriously as it needs to be, legalization also has the opportunity to right at least some of the wrongs of cannabis prohibition, expunge the records of our future community leaders, and give those disproportionately penalized a late but second chance to not only succeed but thrive. I have been involved in over 50 calls, meetings, and conversations pre-post election, helping to give input on the current bills of adult use cannabis legalization. I want to thank Senator Murphy, Senator Port, and the co-authors for not only working on legalization this session, but for involving so many current and future Minnesotan stakeholders to be involved in the process. The time is now, and we are all here living it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valancourt. I'd actually like to ask our next two in-person testifiers to come to the table. Our next two testifiers are actually virtual, but I think this will save us some time. So Ms. Droz and Mr. Schwant, if you would please come to the table. And members, if you'll draw your attention to the screens, we're about to hear from Adam Wagner from Twin Cities THC. Mr. Wagner, if you would please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, and commence your testimony.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Adam Wagner. I'm owner of Twin Cities THC, cannabis cultivation and education company. My main focus since 2018 has been to teach people about cannabis with the cannabis plant itself, from seed germination to harvest. During this time, I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with many amazing individuals who have learned a lot about themselves and life by growing a cannabis plant. As we all know, the farming industry is a crucial part of our economy, providing jobs and supporting rural communities. However, in recent years, many farmers have faced challenges due to declining crop prices, changing weather patterns, poor soil quality, and high nutrient prices. This is where the legalization of cannabis can play a significant role. As demand for cannabis products continue to grow, there is an opportunity for farmers to diversify their crops and tap into a new lucrative market. This is a chance to bring people like me who grew up in inner cities into the farming industry and reignite the fire that keeps millions of Minnesotans warm. Passing this bill could mean others like me from inner cities and suburbs learn about and plant their own roots within this community. Cultivation of cannabis helps spark the green thumb in me. If it wasn't for cannabis, my children would have tasted a fruit or vegetable grown from my garden. I just didn't have the interest before. Cannabis is the gateway to a rural life for me and my family. There is no doubt in my mind cannabis will spark the same interest in someone out there like me. This bill focuses on the opportunity for many and not just a select few. Cannabis can help people give a better interest in farming like it has with me and many others within this community. Thank you for your time and consideration on legalization of cannabis. I think Minnesota is ready.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Our next testifier is online as well. Stephen Brown, Executive Director of Minnesota Hemp Association. Mr. Brown, if you would please turn on your camera, unmute your microphone, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Steve Brown. I'm a BIPOC hemp business owner and a veteran. I'm also the president of the Minnesota Cannabis Association. We're the oldest cannabis hemp association in Minnesota. Many of our advocates are retailers, edible manufacturers, and breweries. The Minnesota Cannabis Association conducted a poll on how many jobs were created from July 1st edible bill, we found over 500 jobs were created in the state of Minnesota. The July 1st edible bill has driven job growth, innovation, provided a model other states are looking for in hemp cannabis policy. Unfortunately, all this good work that you did is at risk. Many breweries, hundreds of retailers, and many edible manufacturers are flourishing because of this law. If HF 100 is passed in its current form, the legal hemp edible market would cease to exist. The current language in HF 100 hurts this emerging market by repealing the current hemp-derived consumable bills on July 1st, 2024. This would eliminate hundreds of existing Minnesota retailers and emerging hemp-derived Minnesota edible brands. It also changes the definition of hemp and marijuana. The definition in HF 100 changed the term of hemp, which eliminates the ability of hemp-based businesses to have access of banking, credit card processing, tax benefits, and insurance. The bill eliminates many naturally derived cannabinoids. It also hurts breweries and manufacturers. You'll hear from our other advocates on this issue. In closing, the Minnesota Cannabis Association cares about the entire hemp industry and businesses that touch this plant directly or indirectly. We want proper hemp licensing. We want better safety measures for converted hemp-derived isomers. We are for marijuana legalization. We are for expunging people harmed by marijuana laws. We are for promoting BIPOC and other small businesses, but we're not for the current language in HF 100 that hurts hemp-derived businesses. Please remember, hemp and marijuana can coexist together. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Our next testifier is in person. Ms. Droz from Nothing But Hemp. If you would please state your full name for the record and then commence your testimony.
Yes, Eva Droz. Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Eva Droz, and I'm a co-owner of Nothing But Hemp. We are a BIPOC, veteran, and women-owned business. We have retail locations across Minnesota since 2018, educating people about different legal cannabinoids. We started out as a kiosk in Maplewood Mall with 1 employee. We slowly grew to 10 employees, and now since the July 1st bill last year, have over 40 employees with healthcare, dental, 401k, and a livable wage. We won Top 100 Healthcare Leaders Awards by IFA, the International Forum on Advancements in Healthcare, and have always had education, safety, and quality at the forefront of what we do and how we operate. The July 1st edible bill was a blessing for us after going through the hardships of COVID. This could all go away because of the current language in HF 100. We support legalization and this bill because we support the plant, and we know you are working to amend some of the language in this bill. The current adult use cannabis bill repeals the current hemp-derived THC edible law on July 1st, 2024. This would force us to become a marijuana dispensary with no guarantee for a license for current retailers. Also, if we got a license, our business would be subject to 280E IRS tax code that does not allow a federally illegal business to write off normal business expenses. This would kill small businesses. It states in the bill that low-dose THC retailers must sell low-dose THC beverages only, not edibles. Hemp-derived THC gummies and edibles cannot be sold anywhere besides a dispensary. This would be very, very hard for businesses that choose to stay hemp-derived. We know you are working on the amendments. It's difficult as a business owner with all this uncertainty and changes to not know what is going on. It would be great to be part of the conversation as we navigate through this. It also states in the bill that retailers must have a statewide monitoring system. Why would federally legal hemp products be monitored in the same fashion as marijuana? Chain of custody is a better option for small hemp businesses. This is what is recommended in many other states. Hemp and marijuana can coexist. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Mr. Schwant, if you would please state your full name for the record, commence your testimony.
Matt Schwant, thank you, Chair Putnam, committee members. I appreciate your time today. I'm the president and co-founder of Bauhaus Brew Labs, a craft brewery located in Northeast Minneapolis, and for just under a decade, I've had the pleasure and privilege of being part of Minnesota's vibrant, flourishing craft beer industry. Our brewery was thrilled last year when Minnesota passed the amendment to allow small amounts of hemp-derived THC in edible cannabinoid products, and we quickly got to work in developing a hemp-derived THC beverage that's proven to be very popular with our customers, and they're a big reason why the lights are still on at our brewery. Sales of these beverages helped offset decreases that our industry has experienced in beer and hard seltzer over the last couple of years. And post-pandemic, that's been a hard pill to swallow. I want to emphasize from the outset, however, that I'm strongly in favor of a well-regulated adult-use recreational marijuana market for Minnesota, but there are some problematic aspects of SF73 and HF 100 that would would prevent businesses like mine from continuing to participate in the hemp-derived edible market if the bill passes in its current form. And some of the points that I'm going to raise, I think, speak directly to Senator Westrum's questions of a previous testifier. First, SF73 misclassifies hemp-derived edible THC products as marijuana, which of course is still federally illegal. And any marijuana business is subject to IRS Rule 280E, as Ms. Droge pointed out. That prevents businesses engaged in federally illegal activities from claiming ordinary and necessary business expenses on their tax returns. Not being able to deduct expenses like employee compensation, rent, taxes, depreciation. That would put businesses like mine in a tough situation and honestly prevent us from continuing to participate because it wouldn't make financial sense. If small businesses are prevented from participating, well, out-of-state retailers or out-of-state manufacturers will fill retailers' shelves, and that certainly doesn't give preference to Minnesotans or the interests of Minnesota businesses. Second, SF73 would require manufacturers like mine to use exclusive equipment to produce edible THC products. This requirement is arbitrary and serves no practical purpose. We've already proven that we can safely and successfully produce these products on our existing brewery equipment. We've been doing it for half a year. Forcing manufacturers to purchase additional expensive equipment like tanks, packaging lines, hoses would prevent the vast majority of us from continuing to participate. And finally, the three-tier provisions in SF73 that prevent vertical integration are simply not the right move. These are inherently anti-competitive. Finally, I'll quickly wrap up, Chairman. The regulatory uncertainty created with respect to hemp-derived THC products creates a lot of anxiety for business owners like me, not knowing whether we're going to continue to participate in this market in the near future. We understand that there's work being done behind the scenes to clarify the language or create amendments that would remedy these issues. And all we would ask is that the stakeholders in the hemp-derived space be included in these dealings. And with that, I conclude my time, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwant. Members, we will take another break for questions. Do you have any questions or comments? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, the first testifier, I think was from North Minneapolis, talked about their company, their business is vertically integrated. Can you tell me what vertically integrated means when you refer to it as your business?
Mr. Valencourt.
Yes, meaning that we were able to trace everything from seed to sale. We buy hemp from farmers, and then we handle all of the extraction, processing, and manufacturing from there.
Senator Westrom.
So Mr. Chair, my reading of this bill would prohibit vertical integration. So at this point, it looks like your company would not be able to operate under this language that restricts vertical integration. So I'm just curious how that would affect your business, and I guess I don't know. Answer that question first, and then I'll follow up.
Mr. Valencourt.
Yes, so that's why we're actively working behind the scenes and with several groups to try to get some clarifications on things and some amendments made. The size of our business at the end of the day would put us in a position that we should be able to continue the majority of our practices. So we're just going to stay active and keep working on these amendments so that we can keep moving forward. Very optimistic about that.
Well, Senator Westrom, actually, I believe in commerce and in prior conversations, there's been some discussion about the possession of multiple licenses that may mitigate some of this concern. Is someone here who would like to explain that to us a little bit? I guess not. Thank you. If you could if you would please state your name, full name for the record, and the question that I'm asking would be, as a follow-up to Senator Westrum's concern, is could you differentiate multiple licenses from vertical integration for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Layli Fadahi. I'm the campaign manager for MN is Ready. We are the state's largest and most diverse coalition of cannabis policy stakeholders, and we've been working to do much of the engagement with these stakeholders to help inform the bill in its current shape, but also as we move forward and improve it. Mr. Chair, to answer the question, multiple licenses. So the bill as it is set up, it does allow for certain combinations of some of these different licensing categories. Vertical integration would be, as Mr. Valencourt described, the entire supply chain, where you hold, either licenses for all of them, or in the case of, the bill provides that for micro businesses under a certain canopy size, that they would be able to do everything, from the cultivation to the extraction to the manufacture to the retail. Multiple licenses would be, for example, if you're able to combine like a cultivation and a extraction, but then not retail. It's fairly complex in the current version of the bill with 14 different licensing categories. I'd be happy to share. We've made a chart that kind of shows the different combinations. I'd be happy to share that with the committee members, though I would add the caveat that we're very actively working with stakeholders to get a better understanding of whether the way it's currently in the bill makes sense, both for, the current kind of businesses that we have, but also what we anticipate in the future. So.
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe to the testifier, either one of you. So what's the idea behind the banning of vertical integration? What are you trying to accomplish with that language?
Ms. Fahey.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, the prohibition on having vertical integration for all the businesses except the micro businesses is to create additional opportunities for people to participate in the industry and to ensure that there's a fair competitive marketplace. In places where vertical integration is allowed, what we have seen is that a couple of larger companies end up dominating the entirety of the industry. That is not good for consumers in terms of where we end up, with price and choice of products, but also, as has been discussed, a major public policy goal of this bill is to create opportunities for small Minnesota businesses, and especially businesses that are owned by people who've been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And so creating that ability for people to operate at in different parts of the supply chain increases those opportunities.
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. Other questions, members? Senator Dornick?
I was just going to, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I was going to follow up with Senator Westrom's question. So you had mentioned about small businesses, and I love small businesses too, but then those that want to be just a little bit bigger, how does that limit them on this particular issue?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Fadahi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Dornick. It would, so businesses that would be above a certain canopy size, or, a certain size would be limited in terms of what combination of licenses they can hold within that value chain. So for example, as the bill is currently written, a cannabis manufacturer, someone could hold at the same time a cannabis cultivation license and a cannabis manufacturer license, but not a cannabis manufacturer license and a cannabis retail license. This combination, the way it's currently in the bill and the different combinations that are allowed across these 14 different categories are informed in part by what we've seen in other states, how it's been structured. Again, we're in the process of really engaging with the different types of businesses to understand where those separations in the current bill make sense and where we might need to make some modifications and either allow for some combinations that currently are not allowed or disallow, in some instances, ones that are allowed.
Senator Dornick?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that. And so, but we just don't want to make sure we don't limit the small businesses growing to a mid-size. And Senator Murphy, I guess I heard too that they're willing to work on this. So I really hope you can hear the businesses and their plea to really work on this. So appreciate you working towards a solution and having them in the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Murphy or testifiers, this bill is patterned after another state. Is this our own version of what we're doing? And have we learned from the mistakes of others so that we're trying to do better?
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Anderson, I think our expert witness will be able to share a deeper understanding of the work that's been done. But I think before us, you see an effort to build something based on the experiences of other states, but built for Minnesota.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you. So, Senator Murphy, it sounds like we're trying to make sure that this is spread out amongst smaller entities that want to get started in a small business. Are there examples of this happening where this is taking place and it's been allowed for smaller business to expand and grow? And if not, I guess leave it at that.
Ms. Fadimi?
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, in putting together this bill, enormous amounts of research on the parts of legislative staff, the authors, and then, consultation with experts has gone into this over the course of many years, starting with House File 600 that went through and passed in the House in 2021. The bill has been informed by both the successes and the failures of other states. No state has gotten it completely right. With respect to the, some of the decisions around what's in the bill as it pertains to cultivation and agriculture, I'd be happy to have someone that is expert in those portions of the bill follow up. But the answer is that, it's been informed by a lot of things, and in the intervening time, lessons that we have learned both in other states, but also here in Minnesota, having had now a hemp-derived consumer product market, and trying to understand that. So there's a lot of considerations that go into things like what should the canopy size be for a micro business, and things like those are what the things we're actively trying to navigate by looking at data from other states, data within our own state.
Thank you, Ms. Fadhi. And Senator Anderson, unless you have a follow-up, I think it might be prudent for us to start hearing from our next testifiers. Did you? Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Hanselman, if you would please come to the table, state your full name for the sake of the record, and commence your testimony.
Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is John Hanselman, and I own Edwin's Edibles. We are one of the largest gummy manufacturers in the state of Minnesota. In 2019, I started Edwin's in Hudson, Wisconsin, by making CBD gummies. We were prohibited from manufacturing that product in Minnesota. I live in Minnesota. All of our products are manufactured with Minnesota-grown hemp. Thanks to all the hard work in 2022, we were able to come home to Minnesota in July. Along with a larger facility, we were able to increase employee count by 6. Our hemp-derived products were shipped to over 25 states. Later this year, we'll be moving into an even larger facility and adding not only a beverage operation, but more employees as well, specifically for hemp-derived products. While we're in favor of recreational adult use marijuana, the current bill has potential to harm the hemp-derived marketplace. I have invested tens of thousands of dollars into equipment, and I would have to spend tens of thousands more on duplicate equipment to produce hemp-derived products separate from marijuana products. The math simply doesn't work. I could also face not being able to produce hemp-derived products altogether if I had to choose. This would be a big financial hit to our online and wholesale businesses, which we sell to retailers here in Minnesota. If we can't produce hemp-derived gummies in the state of Minnesota, customers will find those products out of our state and simply have them shipped to their homes. The hemp-derived marketplace can coexist with marijuana, and we look forward to participating in both. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hanselman. Our next testifiers are virtual. Mr. Meckelfresh, if you would please state your full name for the record. Turn on your microphone first, then state your full name for the record. Turn on your camera and commence your testimony.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you all for allowing me to speak today. My name is Glenn McAlfresh, and I'm a co-founder of Plip, an emerging hemp-infused beverage company currently moving to Minnesota. We had our first production run at a St. Paul-based brewery last week. It is an exciting and emotional time for our small, 5-person company as our dreams took life after 2 years of hard work. My business partner and I knew Minnesota would be the home for our business and our families after we read last July's bill. My co-founder, Todd, was especially excited to move to Minnesota because he is a native Minnesotan. He graduated from Totino Grace High School in 1997. I'm fortunate to have Todd in my life. He's an amazing business partner, friend, and a loving husband and father. He's also a black man who wants to provide access and opportunity for people who look like him, for those BIPOC kids to have a role model in small business that validates their dreams as much as possible is his life's work. I feel lucky to contribute and be on that journey with him. Todd and I have firsthand experience with the scourge of alcoholism, so the opportunity to safely and broadly distribute federally legal hemp beverages and offer a compelling alternative to alcohol has been a dream come true. We've shaped our careers so that we would be ready for the opportunity to use plant-derived cannabinoids to fight the demon of alcoholism head-on. As a bud tender in Colorado in 2014, I met veterans who use cannabis to manage PTSD and methadone patients who use cannabis to make it to the next dose instead of falling off the wagon. As a cannabis officer at a multi-state cannabis company with licenses in medical and adult use markets and $80 million in revenue, I dealt with expensive operational requirements, inequitable licensing regimes, and often contradictory policy positions that ruined fortunes instead of making them. Todd and I left the cannabis industry and joined the hemp industry because hemp offers a more viable path to help the people we care about, whether we know them or not. In 2020, my uncle and I applied for a craft grower license in Illinois, and we did not earn 20 points because my uncle was not a veteran. Those 20 points proved critical because veteran-led groups received all of the first 40 licenses. However, my uncle could not join the military because he is gay. Minnesota's Veterans Preference Provision at 36.15 and SF 73 mirrors Illinois' language that discriminated against my uncle, other LGBTQ business owners, and individuals who couldn't join the military because of prior cannabis arrests. It breaks my heart that my uncle, a true social equity applicant from the south side of Chicago, and many others like him and not like him, were discriminated against because of their sexuality. The hemp industry is federally legal and should exist in harmony with marijuana legalization. I urge you to listen to the hemp industry's cries for help, preserve a regulatory environment that allows every entrepreneur to chase their dreams, and take all reasonable measures to avoid inadvertently discriminating against LGBTQ agribusiness owners across Minnesota. With that, Mr. Chair, committee members, and Senator Murphy, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McElfresh. Our next testifier is Nicole Matson. Ms. Matson, if you would please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Hi, my name is Nicole Matson, and I'm from Moorhead, represented by Senator Kubek. I'm the Director of Operations and Marketing for Prairie Products Minnesota and Alternative Prairie. I've only been working in the hemp and cannabis industry for about 6 months, and I've learned a lot since then. One of the things I didn't know before is how difficult federal cannabis prohibition makes it for small businesses to compete in this market. There are 2 areas where cannabis businesses struggle: banking and taxes. Because cannabis is illegal at the federal level, credit card companies will not allow cannabis dispensaries to take credit card payments. This forces dispensaries to use difficult workarounds like taking only cash or crypto payments. On the tax side, because cannabis is a federally scheduled substance, cannabis business cannot deduct ordinary business expenses from their federal tax returns. This creates incentives for engaging in creative accounting as well as a very expensive business environment, one that virtually guarantees that only the biggest businesses survive. But there is a way for some small Minnesota businesses to stay afloat in this market, and that way is hemp. Maintaining the legality of hemp-derived Delta THC products is critical to the survival of small businesses. If we can make low-potency hemp-derived products as we do now, we can take credit card payments and do our taxes like any other business. As I read the bill before you, it is apparent to me that one intention of this legislation is to keep as much of Minnesota's cannabis business in the hands of Minnesotans as possible. I think that is a good and laudable goal. In the service of that goal, I would encourage you to keep hemp-derived products legal alongside cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matson. Ms. Michael, CEO of Prairie Products, if you would please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Hi there. My name is Veronica Michael. I'm a founder and CEO of Prairie Products Minnesota, LLC and Alternative Prairie. We extract cannabinoids from hemp, and we have a Minnesota hemp processing license. Since 2014, the founders of Prairie Products have taken time to educate ourselves about the hemp and cannabis industry, travel to facilities around the country, and spend time at grow facilities both indoor and outdoor. I'm excited about the way Minnesota has chosen a stepped and sensible approach to recreational cannabis and the consideration of low-dose consumables. This is different from the way other states have ended cannabis prohibition, and based on my observation, Minnesota's law is well crafted and can be improved and could become a model for other states. I support the current bill and deeply support the Section 23, which includes hemp-derived products, like many have talked about today. This language allows us to capitalize on our skills in agricultural hemp extraction, utilize material grown currently by Minnesota farmers, and for those farmers to also get a return on their investment for the raw materials in their possession. Hemp-derived THC is economical to produce and provides a perfect ingredient for consumables. By making sure that hemp-derived cannabinoids are included somewhere in this bill, we could also maintain quality assurance for the consumer because of the structure currently of hemp regulations for the cannabinoids in Minnesota and the way the federal law is written for hemp. Keeping hemp-derived cannabinoids keeps numerous business processes within our state, thus better ensuring that the economic gains made in this industry stay within Minnesota. This also allows us to maintain sales outside of the state because these products meet those federal hemp-derived marketplace guidelines and expand opportunities to Minnesota businesses. Thank you for taking time today to consider this bill and how it can benefit Minnesota hemp producers and processors like ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Mr. Benson Stabler, would you please turn on your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony.
Hello, thank you, Chair Putnam, Ranking Member Westrom, and Mr. Peterson. Not prepared to share video. Sorry to waste time with that. I am a registered lobbyist for 2 organizations. And speaking with you, SAVE, which is an organization founded to stop the proliferation of cannabis products because of the harm to Minnesotans. ANC, the Anti-Narcotic and Anti-Addictive Drug Coalition, was founded by SAVE to be an organization that would bring together partners that are all united in a Vote No movement. What I would like to bring to your attention today is a matter that I think is entirely overlooked by the bill and which directly pertains to the future of agricultural economy in Minnesota and rural development. It has to do with our water supply. The aquifers of Minnesota are considerably limited. Yes, southern and southeastern Minnesota have considerable depth of water-bearing aquifers, but about 60% of the state is in a fairly delicate balance when it comes to water. There are already, as you all must know, serious restrictions in place in a number of areas that are sort of rolling that restrict water that would be used to produce food. Now, an indoor cannabis operation uses 7 times more water. A year-round operation with 5 crops uses 7 times more water than a corn or soybean crop. And that water comes directly out of the aquifer. It's not going from precipitation to the plants. So we're talking about very quick draining of aquifers. So this is a very serious matter. And there really are only 2 guaranteed sustainable sources for cannabis water use. By the way, the refining or production of concentrates is also water intensive. The Mississippi River below Hastings or Red Wing would be a safe place to draw water, and Lake Superior. And that's basically the only guaranteed sustainable sources for this kind of expansion. Choosing drugs over food is dubious enough, but when you consider how finite and the delicate balance of water in Minnesota, it's a very serious concern. There was just an article in the Star Tribune today about the need to draw water out of the river to supplement water in the metro because, as many know, White Bear Lake can't seem to sustain its water levels as it is, again. And this bill would target production of cannabis in North St. Paul, Maplewood. That would drain the water supply there and impact the equation of these considerations. We have future population growth to plan on, and cannabis would use up this precious resource. Minnesota is blessed to have the excellent water resources that it has. And there really isn't much room for cannabis in a sustainable vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benson-Stabler. Members, here's another time for us to take a quick break and ask any questions that we have of the prior testifiers. Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, just to expand on the water, I just came in with part of the last testifier, but can you repeat for me the locations where you say we have adequate water supply, but other places you'd raise a concern, especially if it was this versus food crops?
Mr. Benson-Stabler.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Southern Minnesota, essentially from Mankato up to, say, Lakeville, and south or southeast of those locations have many layers of water-bearing aquifers. However, north and west of the Minnesota River and west of Mankato, so essentially roughly 2/3 of the state has very low water-bearing aquifers considerably high up or shallow, so that you have a very fragile situation essentially for that 60% or 2/3 of the state, and that's based on the data. So I would say that it would be very appropriate, and I would recommend your Honor's consideration, and I would be happy to provide some information on looking at a study for the state to analyze this, looking at a specific hydrological study. Just considering the general environmental impact, it had been forecast that a few years ago that northern Minnesota, due to climate change, could end up being like the sandhills of Nebraska. So that was a famous, estimation of what climate change could look like for Minnesota. So it's a very serious concern in considering the water impact.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, how much more water does cannabis take to, marijuana take to grow than regular crops? And is there any scenarios where you can just grow it under normal circumstances? Most of Minnesota's crops are just planted and the rainfall is sufficient to raise the crop, and some years you get a little more because the rains were more timely and other years not. But can you not do that with this crop if it were to pass?
Mr. Benson Stabler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Westrom. As was discussed in the House Agricultural Committee, most cannabis production businesses expected under this bill would cause indoor 5 crop per year production. That would, there's no provision requiring the collection of rainwater and having it go into the aquifer, or being stored or treated or used, or anything like that currently in the bill. So those 5 crops per year of cannabis would be 7 times more water used than a corn or soybean crop. But what's particularly concerning is that it would be water coming directly out of the aquifer, whereas a corn crop needs about as much water as it gets in terms of precipitation. There's a little irrigation, but there's precipitation in other parts of the year. So corn, fairly speaking, is a sustainable crop for Minnesota. But these cannabis farms would use 7 times more water and be pulling it directly out of the future reserves.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, last question on this right now, but and I'm not sure if this testifier knows it, but just how many acres do we expect of cannabis to be raised in Minnesota under this this bill? If the testifier knows, or maybe the author knows, how many acres are we talking? 50 acres statewide, or 5,000 acres? Just be helpful as we're talking about this.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. I think Ms. Fatahi might be a good person to respond to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Westrom, that is a very good question and a very difficult one to answer. So what we've been trying to do, and we're continuing to do, is to come up with a good estimate of how much cultivation would need to happen to satisfy what we anticipate would be the market demand for products. And we're using a variety of different data points from other states and such to try to extrapolate and make a best guess. But it will be, at the end of the day, just a guess, and that is part of the reason why it's important to have an Office of Cannabis Management that has a cannabis advisory board with the kind of expertise it has on it, because ultimately, especially when our goal is to ensure that supply meets demand, so that we are able to eliminate the unregulated illicit market, it's going to be important that as we learn what that demand is, we're able to, increase the number of licenses that are given up or down in order to adjust. So the answer is we're not exactly sure.
May I?
Go ahead.
Where's it coming from?
Mr. Chair, the testifier I think wanted to add, but if you're all right, Mr.
Certainly,
Chair.
yeah. Mr. Benson Stabler?
To the last answer, just can you give us a best guess, and then the other witness wanted to say something as well.
Ms. Fatahi.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, let me look it up in my notes. I know I have it jotted down, and then I'd be happy to get back up here and let you know what I have in there.
Ms. Fatahi, if I may ask a question for my own clarification along
Please.
the lines of what Senator Westrom's asking, if cannabis is being grown indoors, is the measure of acres still germane?
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, no, and I believe that in our calculations, acreage was not the unit of metric.
That's sort of part of the complication, potentially.
It is.
Is that fair to say?
Mr. Chair, that's correct, that it's, Minnesota, because of the climate, the growing conditions are going to be different than in some other states. And so we are doing that work right now to try to triangulate the best estimate we can so that we can appropriately in the bill think through, for example, as we had been talking about with, the micro businesses or, the craft versus bulk cultivators, what that appropriate canopy size should be. We want to ensure that we're creating a market that is large enough to meet demand, but, it'll still have to be adjustable as well. So I will look up in my notes and see if I have that number.
I still think it's a very important question that Senator Westrom is raising, but I'm just not sure how we measure it. Is it number of plants or... that's something that we can work out. Apparently, Mr. Benson Stabler would like to opine on this as well. Mr. Benson Stabler.
Thank you, Chair Putnam. The bill says that it wants cannabis production spread throughout the state. So that clearly would indicate a preference for it being everywhere. There's an exemption for the social equity process qualification for licenses where there are no other operations in a given area. And the issue of water is not simply telling cannabis producers where they should grow and should not grow in terms of looking at the way the cannabis industry is currently operating in the recreational legalized states. In California and Oregon, there's a serious problem of water theft. Cannabis producers use up the aquifers and then truck in water to the same location or just leave and go elsewhere where they can get water. People lose their farms because they have no water anymore. So this is what is literally happening under legalization in other states. So it is not just a matter of consideration, but there needs to be considerable thought about what is actually happening in the legalized states in terms of this and all the other issues.
Thank you, Mr. Benson Stabler. We have 3 more testifiers, 2 in person and 1 virtual. I'd like to ask Mr. Stoffren and Mr. Galletti, please, to come to the table.
Mr. Chair, I did find the
excellent. What do you got, Ms. Fuddy?
our rough calculation, based on our calculations of what we think demand will be and yields. We think that Minnesota will need about 684,000 square feet of indoor canopy, reduced accordingly for outdoor grows.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Westrom.
So doing rough math, 640,000 divided by 40, little over 40,000 square feet in an acre, you're talking 15 acres, or a little over 15 acres statewide.
Ms. Fuddy?
Is your expectation all of that would be grown indoors?
Ms. Fuddy?
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, I don't know. I don't know. That's an open question. I think we think the majority of it is going to be indoor, but there may be other experts in the room that would know.
And Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, on another question. I've heard several stories from other areas, Canada especially, out in the East Coast. The smell of big marijuana greenhouses or growing marijuana is apparently a lot like skunk smell. Have you addressed, what would be addressed in this bill to deal with that kind of odor in a neighborhood if a new greenhouse or field popped up? And I mean, in the agriculture sphere, livestock has gone through several of these iterations of smell and odor to neighboring properties. How do we address that in this bill?
Ms. Fuddy.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, the bill has provisions in it for promulgation of standards for odor mitigation, and that would need to be part of a business's an explanation of how they plan to do that would need to be included as part of the application for license.
Thank you. So now if we could please, Mr. Stoffren and Mr. Gowdy, if you could come to the table. And our first testifier of our last three is Mr. Galetta online, please. So Mr. Galetta, if you would please turn on your microphone, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony. We will instead go to our folks who are in person. Mr. Galati, if you would please, state your full name for the record and commence your testimony.
Yes, my name is Ted Galati. Thank you for having me here today to testify. I'm the owner of Willows Keep Farm, a 10-acre farm in Zumbrota, Minnesota. We have Hemp Maze, Minnesota, where we educate and inform the public about industrial hemp and a robust cannabis economy in the state. We also added Canada Disc Golf this year, so you can play disc golf through a cannabis field. We have 13 holes. We also run Old Pine Theater, which is a performing arts theater where we sell our products. And we also are adding a Sacred Mounds farm in Haggard City, Wisconsin, where we will have 10.5 acres and grow hemp there as well. One thing I just want to point out, this is not really a drug issue. We know we've all been lied to about marijuana, cannabis. Cannabis more mimics a hormone. It's not a narcotic, it's not a stimulant, it's not a depressant. Your body produces cannabinoids in the brain. We have an endocannabinoid system. When you hear about people having a runner's high or they're in the zone, an athlete, that's actually cannabinoids being produced by the body. So this mimics more like vitamin D. So you go in the sun, you get vitamin D. You exercise, it's not just endorphins, it's cannabinoids that are being produced by the body. So this is a health issue. 70% of your constituents want to see this bill through. More than likely, this bill is going to go through. Now, why am I here as a farmer? There's a couple reasons. Because I am a hemp farmer, it's not about me trying to get everybody high or me even getting high, okay? I went down this rabbit hole in 2018 when I decided to grow a hemp maze instead of a corn maze. To the issue about water, 1942 to 1945, did anyone know that we grew about 40,000 acres of cannabis in Minnesota? Why? For the war effort. That's cannabis, that's marijuana, that's the same plant. It takes less plant than cotton. It produces fiber that's way stronger than cotton. It's great as a farm product, and it's going to be a commodity. It's not only about the medicinal side of it, which is amazing, but it's about the industrial side of it. So the problem with the bill, there's some issues, and there's 300 pages. It keeps growing and growing. I keep coming to these committees. I keep trying to educate and inform, and that's what I want you all to do. Go down that rabbit hole, spend years, because I'm not going to know it all. You're not going to know it all. There's just too much to learn. So hemp is being thrown into this bill. Hemp, by federal law, is any cannabis that's below 0.3% delta-9 THC. There's 140 cannabinoids in this plant. We've just touched the iceberg, okay? CBD, delta-9, but the list goes on, as you know. My problem is, one of the things is it calls for an importation declaration. So if I'm bringing in any product, any CBD product, any cannabis product from out of state, I need to get a declaration of importation. And I right now bring in products from Wisconsin, Colorado, North Carolina, California, Arizona. You're going to really crimp down the competition, and if it's only going to be hemp-derived or cannabis-derived products in Minnesota, that's going to change the competition. It's going to also change how we do business. Section 59 and 60. Only, and this is, I don't know why it's in there, but it says only allows for hemp, fiber, grain, and topicals. Well, there go all my CBD tinctures, all my CBD gummies, everything. I mean, my vape, it says you cannot vaporize it, you cannot burn it. People, we can right now vaporize CBD, and we can get CBD into the body like that. We can also do CBG. There's other cannabinoids that can be used, and we can smoke it and inhale it, and it's the quickest way to get it in the body. It'll stop migraines and other things quickly. So that's an issue. I think we need to talk about that. And it also eliminates full spectrum products because it says in there that it can only have CBD or CBG cannabinoids in it. It can't have any full spectrum. So you couldn't even have a full spectrum topical.
Mr. Glady, I'm sorry for the interruption, but we are over time.
Okay.
You can submit further testimony in writing if you like, or if you want 20 seconds to finish up, that's
20
cool,
seconds
too.
to finish up. Okay. First off, I don't want to be locked out of this program. I'm an industrial hemp farmer. I want to stay as an industrial hemp farmer. So throwing me into this, I do get affected by 280E tax code, and I also possibly lose banking. Last thing, real quick, there's 14 license categories. I already pay $650 to the MDA to be licensed this year. Those are annual. I know it's not a licensing fee, but it's an application fee, $250 every single time. If I need to have multiple of those, it's going to obviously increase my costs. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be staying in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Glady. We should have Mr. Galetta ready online, if you are. If you would, please unmute your microphone and state your full name for the record and commence your testimony.
Hi, my name is Stephen Galetta. I am a co-owner of First 10 Alternative Farm in Otter Tail County with my son Andrew. We are currently the only hemp growers and one of the 2 processors in the county today. We started growing hemp in 2019. Since then, we invested $300,000 in our business. We are looking forward to expanding into the cannabis business if the bill passes. We want to make sure that small businesses like ours are not squeezed out of the state interest in within deeper pockets. We're also not able to compete with vertically integrated cannabis companies, even if they are in the state, because they would be able to undercut the wholesale prices of the product until we are the only ones left standing. And they're the only ones left standing. And I assume after they have gotten the rest of us out of their way, then they'll raise their retail prices. One thing I would like to see is equitable distribution of licenses across the state of Minnesota, so businesses outside the Twin Cities have an opportunity to compete in the marketplace. Thank you very much for your time and appreciate you listening to my testimony.
Thanks much. Mr. Stoffren, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Putnam and committee members and Senator Murphy. My name is Justin Stoffren. I'm the Anti-Monopoly Director for the Minnesota Farmers Union. As this committee well knows, MFU is a grassroots general farm organization. Our members set our policy. At our annual convention last year, our members did approve support for legalization. It was a narrow vote, so we don't feel we have a mandate on this topic. That being said, if this bill does become law, our members were unified around 3 particular issues I want to raise for all of you today. First is we support the limitations on vertical integration. We're glad to see that addressed in Section 16, Subdivision 3 of Article 1, but would urge caution with regard to the exemption outlined for the first year. Vertical integration serves to crowd out competition and make it harder for producers to earn a fair margin on what they produce. Second, our members passed policy in support of limits on licenses for multi-state operators. While we don't see that explicitly addressed in this proposal, I believe the criteria laid out for allocating licenses would help prioritize smaller operations and limit the large companies already operating in other states from expanding to Minnesota, importing products, and crowding out new startups. Our members support leveraging this opportunity to create a genuinely new market from seed to end sale and believe that would keep more wealth in Minnesota communities. Finally, for any legal market, our members support clear, fair regulations for growers that are led by the Department of Agriculture. We support where the legislation calls on MDA to help inform regulations placed on growers. Thank you, committee members, for your time, and as always, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stoffren. Members, any questions for our last 3 testifiers? Any brief questions for our last 3 testifiers? Well, members, that takes us to the point of our discussion of the bill itself. One of the themes from our discussion today, which I found remarkable and heartening, was that this is a bill that we're still working on. And in that spirit, I offer the A30 amendment. Members, the A30 amendment is simply a list of technical changes that we were asked to adopt by our friends at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. There is a copy of it in your packet if you'd like to take a quick look. In the meantime, will the bill's author have an opinion on this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I haven't seen the amendment yet. I don't have a packet. So I am familiar with this amendment. I don't have the language in front of me. As I understand it, it is technical in nature and supported by the Department of Agriculture. And I understand that Senator Port supports it.
Is this the USDA one? Is this the USDA one? I think I have
So members, before us, we have the A30 amendment. Has everyone had a chance to take a quick look at it? Again, it is merely some technical provisions that our friends at MDA asked us to adopt.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Westrom.
Could you or council just walk through what the technical changes are?
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Ms. Painter, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you. The Department of Agriculture asked us to exclude products similar to meat food products, poultry food products, or dairy products from the definition of edibles to ensure that they don't violate our federal food safety standards. There was another, sorry, let me just refer back to my bill. So that was on page 3, line 3. Page 23, line 3, sorry. And then there was some adjustment made to the rest of the list of those items describing approval of cannabis flower products and cannabinoids. And then on page 50, where it talks about cannabis cultivator, this is in the cannabis cultivator operations section. It asks that the agricultural chemicals and other inputs, the rules made for cannabis cultivators is done in consultation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. And then there's a technical change to page 51, line 3, where it talks about pesticides, deleting pesticides and inserting agricultural chemicals and other inputs. And then it clarifies that the cannabis cultivators must comply with chapters 8B, 8C, and 8D. The bill itself said 18B, 18D, and 18E, so it was correcting those errors. And then after pesticides, also that the cultivator must comply with not just pesticide laws and rules enforced by the Commissioner of Agriculture, but also those laws relating to fertilizer, soil amendment, and plant amendment. And then the last set of changes is on page 216, and I believe that has to do with the temporary regulations of how we define an edible product. And again, we're excluding products that are similar to meat, poultry, or dairy.
Thank you, Ms. Painter. Members, Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 51, where you delete pesticides, should you also, in that next line, line 4, it says any other pesticide laws, should you delete that word also? If you're going to change the word on for the title?
Ms. Painter.
Mr. Chair and Senator Anderson, no, I believe the intent with changing pesticides to agricultural chemicals and other inputs was to include not just pesticides, but fertilizer, soil amendment, and plant amendment. So it would include all of those agricultural chemicals, not just pesticides. So that's the change to the title.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just to be clear, I support your amendment.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, Senator Murphy, I was just saying microphone, it's hard to hear over here. But Mr. Chair, can you clarify for me that language in Ms. Painter are we taking the requirement of keeping a log of all the fertilizer pesticides used out in this amendment? Or, and Mr. Chair, I have a similar amendment otherwise that was going to highlight that issue. So I'm trying to figure out if we're making this provision a little better or what we're actually doing on that.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Ms. Painter, if you would, please.
Mr. Chair and Senator Westrom, no, that's not what is being done in this amendment.
So, Ms. Painter, Mr. Chair, this would still have that requirement on farmers to keep all those records.
Ms. Painter?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, Ms. Painter, you talked about language that says in consultation, the language that talks about the consultation with the Ag Commissioner. Can you explain that a little bit more? What are we deferring to the Department of Agriculture, and what are they going to come up with for rules that pertains to pesticides used? Or explain that provision a little more before we vote on it, if we could.
Mr. Chesset, would you be willing to step to the table and play the role of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture for the rest of us? To Senator, actually, Mr. Chesset, if you would please state your full name for the record, and then if you could respond to Senator Westrom's questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Peter Chesset. I'm an Assistant Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Senator Westrom, to your question, the main point of this amendment was to avoid any confusion between who has sole discretion over pesticide regulation in state government. The language, as it was originally written, could have provided some confusion over whether the Office of Cannabis Management was able to promulgate its own rules regulating pesticides without approval or potentially in conflict with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. So we feel this language requiring a consultation with our department helps eliminate any of that confusion.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Jessup, why would we not just leave this to the experts at the Department of Agriculture if it's going to be farmed? What would be the reason? Just to have consultation doesn't mean you really have a role in it. Who else would do it? The Office of Cannabis?
Mr. Jessup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator Westrom, one of the intents behind this bill is to try and centralize all cannabis-related regulation into one office, and that would be the Office of Cannabis Management. We just wanted to make sure that since we do have the expertise when it comes to pesticide regulation in Minnesota, that the office was consulting with us while they were promulgating their rules as it pertains to pesticides.
And Mr. Chair, I guess to Mr. Jessup, I'll just ask you, and maybe it's the author knows, where is this office going to be housed? Under which agency, or are we creating a whole new agency, the department, just like the Department of Agriculture?
Mr. Jessup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Westrom, so this would be, in fact, a new agency. It's the bill calls for the creation of the Office of Cannabis Management. Where it will be housed, it wouldn't be housed at, say, MDA or another agency. It would be a standalone new agency.
So,
Senator Westrom.
Okay. Maybe a further discussion to have, Mr. Chair, but I guess it begs a lot of questions. Do we really need a whole new agency just for one product? That's shocking to me. With Department of Agriculture, Mr. Jessup, would the department be willing to house this as a division? We don't have an agency on corn and then another agency on soybeans and another agency on potatoes, and then throw in cattle, an agency on cattle. It seems like this would be a lot of growth and size of government, Chair Senator Murphy, just for one crop, do we really need a full agency versus housing it under the Department of Ag? Or seems like that's the best fitting, but Mr. Jessup, any comment on that?
Mr. Jessup, feel free to answer this. I am going to encourage us to move back to the topic of the amendment in a moment, but this is, I think, related in a sense. Senator Westrum's line of inquiry is. But if you could answer this question for us, please, Mr. Jessup.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Senator Westrum, thanks to you and all the other senators in this room, Commissioner Peterson was confirmed today. So I am not going to say that we can house it at the MDA for my own job security interest. But I think just to answer your question, Senator Westrum, it's because the legalization of adult use cannabis is so multi-jurisdictional and enterprise-wise. It does have an ag component, it has a health component, it has a tax component. It would be, and other states have tried to house their legal adult use programs in one particular agency, and oftentimes states have gone through that exercise, have found it better to create one agency, one, again, centralized agency to oversee all the various aspects of adult use regulatory framework.
Thank you, Mr. Jessup. Members, any other questions about this amendment? Okay. We should vote on it. So all in favor of the 830 amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion is adopted.
Mr. Chair?
Certainly. Question and discussion. Senator Westrum.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the A33 amendment.
The A33 amendment. Senator Westrum moves the A33 amendment.
Mr. Chair, this amendment would just would clarify that keeping track of fertilizer and chemicals used would not become part of the record log that is going to be used for farmers. Concern becomes a slippery slope around here, and certainly we understand why we'd want to have records of where crops are raised, but to burden farmers and set a standard of now starting to keep 5 years of records of fertilizers, pesticides, crop amendments to part of the farming practice, I think goes over the top. And so this would just clarify that it does not include that, and we wouldn't have the Department of Agriculture or somebody coming up with new rules that starts regulating and burdening farmers in the traditional sense with this kind of unneeded paperwork. That's what this amendment would do.
To the bill's author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members. Thank you, Senator Westrum. I am, of course, consulting with the experts as well as people from the Department of Administration as I'm looking at this amendment. I have concerns about it. I think that we are standing up a very important policy for the state of Minnesota, and there has been a great deal of work done in preparing this legislation, and that work is continuing, obviously. But I think that the drafting of the legislation as it is accurate and right on this point, and I would like to turn to the Department of Agriculture just to weigh in on this amendment.
Mr. Cheseth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we would have serious concerns about this amendment record keeping when it comes to pesticide regulation and other agricultural chemical regulations as a key component of what we do at the department. And Mr. Chair, if I may just have my colleague Roger McAdams expand, please.
Certainly. Sir, if you would please state your full name for the record and then commence your testimony.
Mr. Chair and the committee, my name is Roger McAdance. I'm the Assistant Director of the Pesticide and Fertilizer Management Division. In this case, it's very important that they do have those records for a lot of different things. As we all know, cannabis isn't federally legal crop, so it's important that we know what they are using on those products, not only so that the end products can be tested, but we can also evaluate those labels to make sure they are legal products that can be used on those products. There's also, from the fertilizer and soil amendment, many states have had some concerns about unregistered or non-legal products, if you will, in their states being used on some of this. So it is very important. We strongly suggest keeping all record keeping that's being used on these products, at least until we know exactly what's out there, what people are going to be used on these products, because we can't just say, like corn or soybeans, you have to use a label that's listed for corn, right? Because they don't have cannabis on there, so we have to interpret those labels individually. So having those records as what people have applied are very important to the regulation. So.
Thank you, sir. Members, any other questions or discussion of this amendment? Senator Kupek.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this amendment, I know there's some of the producers that I've talked to, they're concerned that they want to have a product that is pesticide-free. And so if we adopted this amendment, would that inhibit their ability to know whether what they are buying is pesticide-free or not?
Gentlemen?
Mr. Senator, assuming people tell the truth, you know, they would tell you if they use something or not. But the record keeping is some way that we would check to find out if indeed they are using pesticides or fertilizers or any kind of other amendment on there, and if they were making claims that they were not, but yet we found they would, that would help us indicate that, yes.
Members, any other discussion or comments about the A33 amendment? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, to the testifier, do we require this on corn and soybean farmers? Do you have 5 years of records that are required by the department now on farmers on corn, soybean, and traditional crops?
If you would, please.
Mr. Chair, depending upon the type of product they use, if it's a restricted use product, yes, they do have to keep records. Farmers would have to keep records, as would commercial applicators for that period of time. Correct.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, but fertilizer is not a restricted product, is it?
Mr. McAdams.
Mr. Chair, no, they do not have to keep the fertilizer records. On the pesticide side, they have to keep those records.
And Mr. Chair, Mr. McAdams, plant amendments, I'm not even sure what that is, but I assume you change planting. Do we keep a record of that right now on farmers?
Mr. McAdams.
Mr. Chair and the board, the record keeping is on the sales of those products and the distribution of those products, yes. The farmers do not have to keep records on their application. But as I indicated earlier, when you get a new industry out there, and as many testifiers have said, they're talking about doing this stuff in greenhouses and supporting that, we do need to make sure those products are registered. Those might be a new market that's coming in, so getting those records of what they're using is a great way for us to determine, are those products, are those inputs they're using actually registered in the state? Are they paying their fees? And are they making claims that they should or shouldn't be making?
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, I just would urge members to support this. I don't think we want to go down this road of record keeping and one step closer for all farmers to now have an excuse by a state agency to say, well, we require it over here. We've already got a template for it. Now let's start keeping track of all 5 years of fertilizer on fields that farmers have produced. And so that's my concern. I don't see the need to keep track of how much fertilizer is on a crop like this. And the concern would be, once the camel's nose is under the tent, farmers beware. And so I think it's a very reasonable amendment, but I'd urge members to support it.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The amendment fails. Senator Kupek.
Thanks. I'd like to offer the A32 amendment, which is also just another technical amendment to the bill. This one, I think, is hopefully fairly straightforward. It does change one thing on page 49. It inserts the word square before feet, which I think was just an accident. So instead of feet is just a weird kind of thing. It should be square feet as opposed to that. And then also on page 5, when it talks about cannabis paraphernalia, it deletes the first line that says cultivating or harvesting cannabis plants or cannabis flower. I'm assuming that might mean a tractor might become cannabis paraphernalia if we labeled it that way, if that's the way I'm reading it. But it is just a technical amendment to scratch that out and just clean things up a little bit.
Senator Kupek offers the A32 amendment. Discussion and questions, members. Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Kupik, you're saying your amendment would help clarify that tractors are not paraphernalia?
Yes, Senator Westrom, that is correct.
Okay. That seems
I appreciate your
reasonable,
skepticism in that, Senator Westrom.
That seems reasonable, Mr. Chair, but this does point out a little of the ridiculousness of this bill. But we don't want tractors to be paraphernalia, so I'll support this.
Yeah, on this, I think we are likely to be unanimous. To the bill's author.
I support Senator Kupek's amendment and its intention.
Okay. Members, any other question or discussion? To the A32 amendment, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The A32 amendment is adopted. Members, other comments, questions, or amendments? Senator Kupek.
Sure. And Chair, this be for the author here. So we did hear a lot of people today, talking about kind of reconciling the hemp and the cannabis industries together so that they could move forward. And I know there's still discussions going on. So is there, and maybe just a little update on that front as to where that is progressing so that we could get those things kind of buttoned up here before the bill is done?
Well, let me begin. Senator Kupek, I have not been at the table in all of these negotiations, but I've heard a great deal about them. As I mentioned, I believe this bill is going to go through 18 committees. We've been through 4. I think today is the 4th. So there's going to be a fair amount of ongoing discussion and examination of this proposal. And I have been encouraged, even in this hearing, as I've listened to people who were identified as coming to testify in opposition to the bill, talking about their support for moving forward with their concerns, and that they are being heard, that they want to be at the table, and they are drawing a clear, I think, a clear picture of where their concerns rest. So that gives me a great deal of hope in this early part of the session, that the intention on the part of the bill's authors and this legislature is to create something that's going to work for the people of Minnesota, with the intention of taking amendments and people's concerns into strong consideration as we move forward.
Members, other questions, comments, or amendments? Senator Dames.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to do the A34 amendment.
Senator Dames moves the A34 amendment.
This would be known as a GMO amendment. What this does is on page 23, it deletes line 25 and 26. And then if we go to page 51, it deletes limitation on line 14 and inserts permit, and deletes must not and inserts may. So what that would do is remove that GMO language saying that it may not and allow a must by the department to allow it. And I would ask that the author look at this as a friendly amendment. Senator Murphy.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Dames. This amendment was brought to my attention earlier today by Senator Port and by others, and I understand the purpose of this and do consider it a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
And Senator Dames, thank you very much for the work ahead of time.
Thank you.
Any other discussion of the A34 amendment or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The A34 amendment is adopted. Members, any other questions, comments, amendments, concerns? Senator Western.
Mr. Chair, question for the author. I talked to one of the witnesses about it, but can you, Senator Murphy, explain to us what the definition of vertical integration is relating to this bill?
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Westrom. In very colloquial terms, from seed to retail, it is one entity controlling and therefore having in some cases, an oversized reach in a new market. That's very colloquial, and I have an expert here who has much more experience than I, and so I'd invite her as well to answer the question.
Okay.
Ms. Fatemeh.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, I think that is an accurate description of what the term vertical integration means. It is when one entity operates across the entire supply chain for a product or industry. So from cultivation to shelf, seed to shelf.
Thank you, Ms. Fatemeh. Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, can you point to the part of the bill where that definition is clear for the purpose of this bill?
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, I see your point that in the bill there is vertical integration prohibited, but the term vertical integration is not defined. That may perhaps be something that we can consider adding to a definition section.
Thank you, Ms. Fatemeh. Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, thank you. That was my understanding too as I read through it. We don't really know. I mean, vertical integration is kind of thrown around. One of the testifiers said they were vertically integrated, yet they sound like a small business in North Minneapolis. They would be prohibited from this bill the way it reads right now and the definition of vertical integration. And I just don't think we're ready to pass it out of this committee when we would have this kind of a undefined section of the bill, not knowing what we're going to do. But Mr. Chair, I've got one other follow-up, but I'll let others talk first, and then I'd have
Senator
one more
Westrom.
question.
Which one is it? Mr. Benson Stabler would like to comment from online.
Thank you very much, Chair Putnam. I would like to ask the committee to consider doing a water study and coming back to reconvene and look at these specifics, please.
Thank you for comment, Mr. Benson Stabler. Members, any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I understand this bill is going to the Environment Committee, and I know that the issue of water, of course, and water, and industry is something that we are always paying attention to in Minnesota, and that would be the proper committee to take that up.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the A28 amendment.
Senator Dornick offers the A28 amendment.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Dornick.
is it okay if I start?
Yes, please do.
So this addresses page 51, and it's the line 6, a cannabis cultivator must not apply pesticides when pollinators are present to allow pesticides to drift to flowering plants that are attractive to pollinators. So what we're concerned with, that there could be as few as 2 pollinators were present. Even the most diligent farmer would be unable to ensure compliance with such a standard. So now we're not against protecting pollinators, and we know it's a worthy goal, and the pesticides should be applied within standards established by law. We agree that pesticides need to be used, and they're not always bad, but they need to be used carefully. So this amendment strictly just gives more trust and flexibility to the farmers, and it adds just to the extent practicable. So again, it's just a common sense add-on to allowing farmers to make that call just like they do in the application of pesticides and in the other crops. So that's it, Mr. Chair, on that.
Thank you, Senator Dornick. It looks like our friends from MDA would like to opine on this one as well. Mr. Chesteth, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I don't think we see the need for this amendment simply because if there was a pollinator risk in place, and depending on the product the individual was using, there would be a label warning already on the product itself. And then, of course, indoor facilities, it wouldn't pertain to them. And I do have Roger here again if you'd like further context on that.
Okay. To the bill's author, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Senator, to the author of the amendment. I appreciate the testimony from MDA. I understand also when we add this language, it creates some space for forgiveness, but I think in this case it also can be confusing, and the language as it's drafted is clear, and so I would ask members to not support the 828 amendment.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Any members, any further discussion? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, I hope members can see the reason to support this amendment. I actually don't think it goes far enough, but I guess question for the Mr. Jessup with the Department of Agriculture. How is the intent to not have any pesticides be used in cultivating marijuana? I mean, is that the intent? And maybe the author could answer that as well. Because if that's the intent, then we should just say it. But otherwise, that's what this language would do, because if there's 2 or more pollinators present or plants, flowering plants that would attract pollinators, which marijuana itself is, you could not use pesticide under this language. And is that the intent to the author, and then maybe to the representative from the Department of Ag?
Mr. Chesson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Westrom, no, the intent is not to prohibit all use of pesticides. In fact, that is one of the issues that the Office of Cannabis Management would, again, work with MDA on in terms of how to best promulgate rules governing the use of pesticide. It's more, I think, just, and again, I'd like to actually call on my colleague Roger McIndez here to provide a little more context as to why this may not, in fact, be needed.
Mr. McIndez.
Mr. Chair and the committee, and it's language that's pretty typical on labels. So if it's on a label, it may not necessarily need to be in the statute as well. I'm not disagreeing with that. But keep in mind, even taking it out doesn't really change anything. Understand that, as many of the testifiers have said, most of this stuff will be in grown indoors, so there will be pesticide use. There are no pollinators indoors, so there's no exposure to the pollinators indoors. So as we evaluate pesticide use or misuse on corn, on soybeans, there are many products that have this very similar language, and it's a timing thing when pollinators are present or not. So it's not language that's not already out there on many labels that are in the industry right now.
Thank you, Mr. McInerney. Any members, any other comments? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, Mr. McInerney, I mean, the language says if there's pollinators present, you can't use it. It doesn't say if there's 500 pollinators or more. Pollinators would be plural. That'd be 2 or more. So are you saying the language is out there, but they don't apply it the way it's written?
Mr. McInerney.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, no, I'm not the author. I didn't write the language, right? So my stance is I'm saying there are many pesticide labels out there for the protection of pollinators that restrict the use of products when pollinators are present or when they're foraging. Foraging might be a better word than present, right? If they're eating, it is out there, and that is part of our duty as the Department of Ag and the growers and the applicators of these pesticides to pay attention to that, because there are a lot of products that are like that, and it's important to know the time of the day when maybe pollinators are present and the application shouldn't occur. It may be the weather conditions, things like that. And then obviously if there's a greenhouse scenario, that language, even though it's there, doesn't come into play because pollinators are not inside the greenhouse, which many of these are saying. So, but we have a challenge regulating this language today on labels, but it is out there. I just want people to understand, in this statute or not, it's already out there on many labels.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, and that's my point. This language is overly broad, and anybody that cares about farmers and the concern that they hear and we hear from farmers, Mr. Chair, about government overreach and regulations, you put this language out there, we're hearing a little bit different interpretation or application of it, but that's not what the language says. It says pollinators, plural, that's 2 or more, or flowers or plants that attract pollinators. Well, that's just about every plant out there, but certainly marijuana plant is considered a pollinator, and if you've got any sort of other weed, milkweed or anything nearby, you cannot use pesticides. And so maybe that's what the marijuana cultivators want. They want it, no pesticides, but we certainly know farmers don't want this kind of overreach from a state agency, and that becomes the slippery slope, Mr. Chair. And so the language of to the extent practicable is not even far enough in my opinion, but I think it's much better than language that you cannot actually enforce, or you're just banning any use of pesticides. And if that's the intent, then that's what the author should just change the language to say.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westrom. I appreciate the discussion here and what you're raising. I think the folks from the Department of Agriculture are laying out a fine argument that we should pay attention to. It is not the case that there's an interest in banning pesticides. It is the case that this is an effort to create a new market, a new product. I think it is wise for us to err on the side of safety. I think you're raising a fair question. I think it's something that I would be happy to have a further conversation with you about. I don't believe the people from the Department of Agriculture knew about this ahead of time, and they are suggesting they would be happy to talk with you about it as well. I think that's important, but for now, I would ask the members to vote no on this amendment. We can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Any other comments, questions, or concerns relative to the A20 amendment? Senator Dames.
Just a comment on that. This is the department, or this is the committee that deals with that. And so if we don't deal with it today, we just push it down the road, where's it going to get dealt with? Other agencies or other committees probably are not going to deal with it because it belongs here. And so I don't know why we're pushing it down the road. I think there's been a very good case made as to why that should be changed. And it's not, it just lays it out that if there's more than 2 pollinators or 2 flowers, that this might not be practicable. And so we just want that language in there, and I don't think that's asking too much, and I think this is the committee we should be doing our work in and not passing it off to somebody else to do their work. So I would appreciate if you would reconsider your thoughts on that. Well, thank you, Senator Murphy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dames. It seems as though one of the sticking points here is a distinction between marijuana cultivation and other kinds of farming that occur outside. And we have talked about hearing the farmer's voice in this committee. And so I would like to ask if anyone who is here who farms cannabis would like to talk a little bit about their use of pesticides in that context, and if it is in fact a concern for hitting pollinators if you are using pesticides indoors. Is there anyone here who would like to testify for that? If you would please come to the desk, state your full name for the record, and enlighten us a little bit. Again, I think Senator Westrom has a really great point that we need to listen to farmers, so here's our chance to hear you.
Hi. I might not represent the majority of the growers. I grow outside, and I grow with no chemicals, none. No Roundup, no Miracle-Gro.
Pardon me, ma'am, for just one moment. Could you identify yourself, say your full name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Molly Jacobson Cronk. I'm the owner-operator. I have a hemp farm in Oakdale, Minnesota, 15 acres. So I'd be happy to write down the pesticides that I'm using for 5 years because I don't use any.
Thank you, Ms. Conk.
Mr. Chair, could we have...
Do you have any other questions?
No, thank you for helping us address this specific amendment, which is where our concern is.
Yes.
Mr. Galati, would you like to come back up to the tip?
Yeah, so I'm Ted Galati again, owner of Willis Keep Farm. We've been growing since 2018. As far as pesticides go, for one, you can't, as a hemp grower right now, really get pesticides or herbicides because if it's not on the label, you can't use the products. So when you go to, whether it's Ag Partners or wherever, to get your pesticides, herbicides, and I've had this discussion before, those products all need to conform and say, okay, hemp is on there. So usually it'll say soybean, corn, whatever you're growing, beans. So henceforth, you can't really use it. Now what we do use is we use neem oil, we use organics that are going to deter bugs from being on the plants. But the other thing you should know too is it's not like, so bees will come to the hemp plant or the cannabis plant late in the season, outdoors. But the way that these plants are pollinated is through the wind. So Minnesota has Minnesota ditchweed outside because of the war effort. That's why there's Minnesota ditchweed still outside all over our state. Those plants will pollinate cannabis. And that doesn't matter if you're growing marijuana outside or you're growing hemp outside. So most people that cultivate for CBD or the medicinal part of CBD are growing indoors in a greenhouse. And if you're going to do cannabis, you're going to do marijuana, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't want it to be pollinated. Because if there's a male in your field, that's going to pollinate all your females and you're going to get no cannabinoid production. It's going to start producing seeds, and the seeds do not hold THC, so there's going to be no point to grow outdoors. So majority of these people are going to be growing indoors for the smokable products or the medicinal or the high, because they're going to want to get 25, 20% THC in their plants. Same thing with me. When we grow out, I don't even grow outside CBD anymore. My crops are all fiber crops. They grow 15 feet tall with no added water input. I'm going to throw that in there again. So the point being is if you're going outside for the industrial aspect, great, I want pollinators. I want songbirds. I want all those, animals out there enjoying it because they're going to deter other pests, and I'm not going to have to use pesticides or herbicides. The plant is very robust and can survive being attacked by grasshoppers and different bugs that chew on it. There's even the Asian borer. It bores into the plant. So what I'm trying to get at is, for the most part, we don't use anything on the plants other than like a neem oil, but that does beg for me to question if hemp's thrown into this bill, me using neem oil, is that going to be a problem? Because that's really the only thing that we use to try to deter some of those pests. So I guess I would question that. I guess you have to determine what you want to see in the bill, and then once it's passed, how our lawyers or attorneys going to, be able to decide that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gladdy. Senator Dames?
No.
Members, any other questions or discussion of the A28 amendment? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay. The amendment is not adopted.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Anderson.
I have the A29 amendment.
Senator Anderson moves the A29 amendment. Senator Anderson, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subdivision 8 talks about reporting requirements for a nonprofit corporation that receives a grant under this subdivision 4. And so because of the reports that are being asked here, I'm adding some extra information on there for further clarification as to who it is that gets the grant or the loan, the repayment of those loans, and then of those loans or grants, loans were, how many were forgiven. If we remember back in the last year or so, we've had some nonprofit corporations that have hit the news market, and it wasn't very good news for us. And so I'd just like to make sure that we get this information recorded and sent back to the department and whoever else is going to be looking after these grants and loans as they're given out. And I appreciate your support.
To the bill's author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could have just a moment. This is the first I've seen it. Thank you.
Certainly, Senator Murphy.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Murphy.
before we proceed, could we I would just love to hear from council, just to make sure I understand
Ms.
take
Painter.
on this.
Mr. Chair and Senator Murphy, was there a specific question you have? Sorry. Or you just want me to walk through this amendment?
Senator Murphy.
So this amendment relates to reporting requirements in the Can Grow program. And the amendment just adds some things that they want, that would add to the list of things to be reported on. So the amendment is requesting geographic information regarding the issuance of grants and loans under the section, the repayment rate of loans issued under subdivision 5, which is the loans to farmers, and a summary of the amounts of loans forgiven.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. When we get the amendments as we do, it's always helpful to hear from council. And as I review this amendment and in the context of the bill, I would consider this a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Members, questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The A29 amendment is adopted. Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, question for the author. Senator Murphy, is the intent for farmers to be able to grow and sell this, peddle it on their farm? How do you foresee that working along with, we heard from some testifiers, farmers markets and things like that? At what point do licenses become required? If you can explain that a little bit, and then I've got a follow-up question.
Senator Murphy.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn to our expert.
Ms. Fadehi.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, the bill requires for retailers of cannabis products to have a retailer's license, and it requires that the Office of Cannabis Management promulgate some rules setting parameters on the operation of retail establishments. In this bill, I don't believe that it authorizes the sale of products straight from the farm unless the kind of facility that they are selling out of would satisfy the requirements in the bill for a licensed retail shop.
Senator Westrom.
So if they're just selling out of their farm, what do you foresee? Any license required at that point?
Ms. Fadahi.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, yes, there would be a need for a retail license. The bill requires for the adult use cannabis space for all retail to be licensed.
So,
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, to the author and to the witness, the intent of a license might be one thing, but how does that square with the Minnesota Constitution, Article 13, Section 7? Any person may peddle or sell a farm product off their farm. It looks to me like that would be a provision that anybody peddling it off their farm is going to have constitutional protections once we legalize this. How are we going to require licensing of that? Just like a farmer raising apples in their garden or farm sells apples. The Constitution protects that for farmers. But you're saying this is going to require a license to do that?
Ms. Fadahi.
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, I am not an expert in that area of Minnesota constitutional law.
Mr. Chair, the author, if she would comment on that, please.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. What we are doing with Senate File 73 is creating a new market for a new product. And I think that the people who have been working on this, working with Minnesotans across the state, are doing that with safety and integrity in mind, and working to create a market where many people can participate, and they have envisioned licenses to create, if you will, a regulatory framework that is clear and obvious for people. And that is why there is the requirement for a retail license. I think that's important for Minnesotans to understand how this market is going to work, for the participants, for people who want to participate in it, and that's why it's here.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Murphy, do you think Article 13, Section 7 is not going to apply to this farm product, but it applies to other farm products?
Senator Murphy, as you're thinking that through, I might have a question. I do have a question, actually, that is corollary to Senator Westrom, if he'll indulge me and allow me to participate in the question, too. What makes the cannabis industry particular, special, distinct? Still farmers, but maybe a different kind of farmer. Might have to do with what's done to the plant or to the product after it has been farmed, for example. Like, we don't, I think, expect people who are farming to sell other kinds of refined or produced products that came from the initial farm good. Is this a space where that distinction might lie? I mean, no one expects ethanol on the side of the road. Obviously, that's different because it's been fully refined in lots of different ways. But is this one space in where that distinction between this special different kind of farming and other kinds of farmings might be germane?
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, I think that's a very good distinction. This bill would not require a farmer to have a retailer's license to sell their raw cannabis feedstock to a processor or to a product manufacturer. The retail license is triggered at the point of the sale to the end consumer.
Senator Westrom.
But, Mr. Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the uses of the end product is you cut the plant, and when it's dry, you can smoke it, correct?
Ms. Fatemi?
Mr. Chair, Senator Westrom, that is correct, but subject to a variety of regulations that, as Senator Murphy raised, are relevant to consumer and public safety, including things like making sure that the product is packaged in the kind of packaging that, children wouldn't get into, or that it's packaged in a way that ensures that customers know it hasn't been tampered with or contaminated. Again, I'm not an expert in this area of constitutional law to know if there are other farm products that are regulated at the farm gate before sale to an end consumer. But as a consumer, I would sure hope that's the case.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, we're at the point, but this was a very good constitutional protection that our ancestors, our forefathers and mothers saw the need for letting people sell stuff off their farm, and that's what the language clearly says. They can peddle it if they've farmed it or cultivated it in their garden or farm without any license. So now we turn around and make this a legal farmable product, and there's nothing stopping farmers from now having marijuana sales off of all their farms across the state and making it that much easier to access for kids and youth and anybody else. No license means no license. So when we turn this product into something that all of a sudden is treated like corn, potatoes, apples, or other types of traditional crops, that becomes a huge concern. So, Mr. Chair, I think I've made my point. I don't think we know the answer to this question, and I think if you read the language on its face, it's going to have to be sold like raw milk, or a bushel of corn can be sold to somebody that comes to the farm. And that provision has been longstanding in our state, and we think it's pretty valuable to have farmers be able to raise, cultivate, and sell their products. But this becomes a whole new world when you start having marijuana that easily accessible all across the countryside. So I thought the answer was probably what I got, and I think it is. So, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a roll call vote on this final passage under Rule 12.10, and that it be recorded in the journal.
Certainly, Senator Westrom, roll call requested, roll call granted. But
Mr. Chair, I think there has to be 3 of us that affirm that request. So just as we get the process.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. I was not aware of that. So we have to vote on the question of roll call?
No, you just have to see if there's at least 3 hands to support the roll call being recorded in the journal.
I got 2. So we're good, Senator Westrom. Thanks for that request. But to go back to the prior question just for a moment, Ms. Painter from Senate Council has an opinion on the constitutionality question. So if you could, please, Ms. Painter.
I'll just briefly say that provision in the Constitution doesn't preclude other health and safety regulations. There was a case in 2005 regarding meat sales. So we can talk about this further offline.
Thank you, Ms. Painter. Members. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chair or Ms. Painter, was there a fiscal note required or requested for at least our section, the Department of Agriculture? Did we get one?
Ms. Painter. Mr. Olson.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes, a fiscal note has been requested, but is for our section and is still in process.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Any other questions or comments, members? Mr. Westrom, Senator Westrom.
To that question, do we know about the cost of this bill to our section, but also to the fiscal note of setting up a whole new agency? Do you, Mr. Chair, or Chair Murphy, can you give us the answer to what kind of cost is going to be with this bill?
Senator Murphy.
Fiscal note.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westrom. I have not yet seen a fiscal note. I anxiously await it, as does everybody else.
Chair.
Senator Dames.
When we get the fiscal note, are we going to call this bill back to the Ag Committee so that we can see the fiscal note and discuss that, or is this going to pass?
Prior committees have addressed this without specific fiscal notes at this point, and like we've said all along, which is something I'm very proud of, especially our conversation today, which is something I think we should all feel very good about, is that this bill is, in a sense, a kind of living document that is still being considered, and it's still being changed. So it is not my intention to bring this bill back to this committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I do find that kind of interesting because this is a document that's evolving as it moves through the committees, and it does have a fiscal cost, and with the fiscal cost, we're supposed to see those fiscal notes as it's in the committees. And so I understand your decision, but I think either the bill should not be continued through any more committees till we get the fiscal note, or it should be understood that it will be able to be requested and brought back to the committees to discuss the fiscal note. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dames. Any other questions, comments? Senator Kunish.
Mr. Chair, I move that Senate File 73, as amended, be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Committee on Environment, Climate, and Legacy, and I ask for a roll call.
Ms. Borromeo, if you would conduct the roll call.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry. Senator West.
I asked for a roll call already under Rule 12.10. Just want to make sure that applies to the roll call that was just requested, and that you ask for a show of 3 hands supporting that.
Certainly. I apologize for interrupting. So can I have a show of hands for those who support a roll call?
Under Rule 12.10.
Under Rule 12. We got it.
3?
Yeah.
Very good.
So Ms. Borromeo, if you would please conduct the roll call.
Chair Putnam,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kupek,
Aye.
Lead Westrom,
No.
Senator Anderson,
No.
Senator Dames,
No.
Senator Dornick,
No.
Senator Gustafson,
Yes.
Senator Kunish,
Yes.
Senator Seeberger.
Yes.
With a vote of 5 ayes and 4 nays, Senate File 73, as amended, will be referred to its next committee. Members, that was our big job for the day. Coming up on Wednesday, we'll have some poultry farmers. The poultry industry will be in town for a day on the hills, so the poultry industry will do a presentation on avian influenza. We'll have an informational presentation on the Forever Green Initiative and continuous living cover. And then we'll have 2 bills about those same issues, one from Senator Seeberger, the Forever Green Initiative, and one from Senator Gustafson, the continuous living cover crops. Thank you all for being here. There being no further business before the committee. The Committee on Agriculture, Broadband, and Rural Development is in recess, is adjourned.